The morning was cold and gray over the metallic graveyard, a huge junkyard that covered 20 acres of industrial wasteland on the edge of New Denver. The facility was known all over the area as the place where machines went to die. It was full of broken drones, outdated equipment, and robots that had been thrown away. It was a place where the future died, where progress left its victims behind like a god who didn't care about its creations. Elias Crane stood on the high metal platform of his salvage truck and looked out over the endless landscape of rust and ruin with the trained eye of someone who had spent the last 15 years learning to see value where others saw only junk. He was in his late 40s, but the years of hard work had left deeper lines on his face than just age would have caused. His hands were big and strong, but they were always covered in grease that no amount of washing could get rid of. His palms were covered in lines that told the story of countless repairs and machines that were brought back from the brink of death. The faded logo of Elias's shop, Crane's Mechanical Revival, was stitched onto his work shirt so long ago that the thread had started to come undone. Below the shop name was a small picture of a mechanical heart with wings, which Elias had made himself years ago when he still felt like hope was something real. Elias was alone a lot. His apartment was on the second floor of a 3-story brick building in New Denver's industrial district. In the early 1900s, the building was home to a textile factory. The room was simple and useful, with a bed, a kitchen that wasn't used much, and shelves full of repair guides and technical manuals. The walls were bare except for one picture above his bed. It was of his sister, taken 20 years ago, before the illness took her. Before machines were shown to be unable to save lives, people stayed away from Elias. They said he was weird because he talked to machines like they were people and spent more time with robots than with people. Over the years, the few friends he had left had slowly drifted away because they couldn't understand why he was so obsessed with restoration and recovery. They didn't understand why a man would spend weeks fixing a broken machine when he could just take it apart and sell the parts for a profit. But Elias knew something that most people didn't. He knew that every machine, no matter how broken, had a certain amount of dignity. Every piece of old technology was a person's hope, dream, or attempt to make something that would last. If you threw away a machine without trying to fix it, you were giving up on that hope and saying that the work had been pointless from the start. He had learned that being alone was a small price to pay to keep that belief. As he stood on the platform of his truck today, the junkyard felt different. The light in the morning seemed to be heavier, as if the air itself was full of meaning. Elias couldn't put it into words for anyone. It was just a feeling, an instinct that came from somewhere deeper than logic. He had learned that when he felt this way, something important was usually about to happen. He got off the truck's platform, and his boots hit the ground with a loud thud. The air smelled like rust and decay, with a metallic taste and the smell of old earth. The junkyard around him was a mess, but it was organized. There were rows of broken machines sorted by type, size, and level of damage. Like fallen soldiers on a battlefield that no one had bothered to clean up, industrial robots stood in silent rows. There were humanoid androids all over the ground, with their limbs bent at strange angles and their fake skin ripped open, showing the metal parts underneath. Most of the machines had warning labels on them that had faded over time and weather, but they were still clear enough to show that they were dangerous. One sticker said, "Hazardous." Another sign in big red letters said, "Do not repair." A third sign said, "Military grade, decommissioned," with smaller print below that said, "Destroyed in field operation." Elias went deeper into the maze of machines, past rows of broken drones with their camera housings broken and their propeller arms bent and useless. He walked by old mining equipment, outdated medical units, and commercial service robots that were no longer useful in a world that had moved beyond what they could do. The deeper he went into the junkyard, the quieter it got. It was as if the machines had accepted their fate and didn't want to disturb the peace of their last resting place anymore.
He saw it then.
At first, Elias didn't really understand what he was looking at. The machine was partly buried under a metal framework that had fallen down. This framework could have been part of a large industrial press or some other type of fabrication equipment. The dirt on its surfaces was a rusty color and had built up over years of being outside. Elias could still see the basic design, even though there was damage and debris everywhere. He felt a lump in his throat. The machine was huge, even though it was badly broken. It was at least 7 feet tall. The frame was made of a heavy-duty steel alloy that is only used in the most demanding situations. The design was angular and imposing, with reinforced plating across what looked like the chest and shoulders. This made the silhouette look threatening. The head was smooth and didn't have any features except for 2 dark optical sensors that looked up at the gray sky. They were empty and lifeless, like the eyes of a dead person. The big, clear warning label on its chest was in bold black letters on a faded yellow background. Deathbot, 7 Series. Military Test Model. Dangerous and armed. Do not turn on. Destruction mandatory. Most people, even those who are cautious and reasonable, would have walked right past this machine without giving it a second thought. They would have seen the warning label, read the military classification, and known that this was something made for purposes they didn't want to think about. They would have felt uneasy because they were near a machine that was meant to hurt people, and they would have moved on. But Elias Crane was not like most people. He walked up to the bot slowly and with respect, like someone would approach a hurt animal. His eyes took in the damage with the skill of someone who had spent 15 years learning to read the language of broken machines. He could see deep cuts in the armor plating that he thought were caused by projectiles. There were loose wiring harnesses hanging down like severed nerves, with their insulation cracked and burned away in parts. There were big areas of the chassis that looked like they had been badly burned, which made it look like the machine had been exposed to a lot of heat or an explosion. The left arm was completely cut off and was only hanging on by a few strands of cable and a servo connection that was only partially intact. There seemed to be a big structural break along the femur equivalent in the right leg. Some parts of the outer plating had ripped off, showing parts of the internal mechanical systems underneath, such as hydraulic lines, servo motors, and other parts whose exact purpose Elias would need to learn more about. But what really shocked Elias was not how bad the damage was, but how strong the central frame was overall. The core structure seemed to be mostly intact, even though the outside was badly damaged. The power core housing was still sealed, which means that the main systems probably weren't badly damaged. The processing unit compartment was clearly open and vulnerable, but there were no signs of deliberate destruction. This is the kind of careful destruction that military technicians would use if they really wanted to make a machine permanently unusable. Elias whispered, "What happened to you?" as he ran his hand along the bot's shoulder. The metal was cold and rough from rusting, and in some places, the rust had made the edges sharp. He could feel the quality of the original engineering, the care and precision that had gone into making this machine, even though it was rusty. Elias took out the tablet computer he always had with him. It was an old, broken device that had been fixed and changed many times. He turned on the scanning feature and ran it over the bot's body to look for information that would help him identify it. The scanner found a serial number on the bot's lower back and sent it to his portable database. The results came back in a matter of seconds. The machine was a Deathbot 7 Series unit, which is registered to the Military Innovation Bureau. This is a part of the government that makes and uses advanced combat robots. 7 years ago, during the border conflict, the unit was set to be taken out of service. Destroyed in field operation during Mission Perimeter Defense, classified as unrecoverable loss is the official status. But it was clear that the machine wasn't broken. It was just left behind. Elias smiled a little, which was something that didn't happen very often these days. Destroyed, he said to himself again, his voice sounding like it could have been happy or sad. You don't look broken. You look like you've been forgotten. That was the moment, the exact moment when Elias made a choice that would change his life, this machine's life, and the lives of hundreds of other people he had not yet met. This choice came from a deep place inside Elias, from the part of him that had never been able to accept that anything really broken could be fixed. He took out his phone, which was an older model that worked well, but wasn't very fancy. He scrolled through his contacts until he found Marcus's number. Marcus ran the heavy equipment rental business at the far end of the junkyard. When the call went through, he said, "Marcus, it's Elias. I need the heavy crane and the hydraulic lift system, if you have one. There's something here I need to bring in." "You're crazy, you know that?" Marcus said, on the other end of the line. He sounded like someone who had known Elias for a long time and had given up trying to change his behavior. That thing is a weapon, Elias. A military weapon. Do you really want that in your store? Elias said, it's not a weapon anymore, and he didn't take his eyes off the broken bot. It's just a machine that needs help. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Okay, you got it, Marcus finally said. Give me 20 minutes to get the gear ready. And Elias, be careful with that thing. Military gear can be unpredictable. Elias had never done anything as hard and physically demanding as moving the Deathbot in his 15 years of salvage work. According to the information Elias was able to get from his database, the machine weighed about 2 tons, or about 2,300 pounds. Elias and Marcus had to carefully plan, move, and work together to get it out from under the collapsed metal framework using all of the heavy equipment they had. Marcus showed up with a huge hydraulic crane on the bed of a heavy-duty truck. The crane was made to lift heavy industrial equipment and structural beams, and it could safely lift weights much higher than the Deathbot. But the problem wasn't just the weight. It was also the angle of approach, the stability of the debris field, and the need to avoid making the machine even worse. Marcus said, "This is crazy," as he moved the crane into place and talked to spotters over the radio to make sure he didn't hit anything. I've lifted a lot of things in my life, but never a military Deathbot. My insurance company is going to have a field day if they find out. Elias was already carefully looking at the framework that held the bot in place. He worked very carefully, figuring out which parts of the framework could be moved or taken away without making the debris field unstable. He cut through several pieces of twisted metal with a portable reciprocating saw, taking his time and being careful so that nothing moved without warning. The saw blade made a high-pitched whine that echoed through the junkyard and made Marcus wince. Marcus asked Elias, who had been working for almost 2 hours, "How long do you plan to take with this?" Elias said, "As long as it takes," without looking up from what he was doing. "I'm not going to hurt this machine any more than it already is. The repairs are going to be hard enough as it is." Finally, after a lot of planning, Elias told Marcus that they were ready to try the lift. The crane operator put the heavy lifting machine over the bot's middle frame. Elias had already carefully placed reinforced lifting straps around the bot's torso, spreading the weight out over several connection points to avoid putting too much stress on one area, which could cause the structure to fail. "Slowly lift," Elias told them over the radio. "Stop if you feel any resistance or binding. I want this thing to come up smoothly and steadily." Marcus carefully turned on the crane's hydraulic system, slowly raising the boom. The cables tightened with a metallic twang that Elias could hear even from where he was watching the operation. The Deathbot started to rise up from where it was resting, 1 centimeter at a time. As the bot lifted off the debris, dust and rust fell off its surface. The severed arm, which had been hanging at a strange angle, swung back and forth as the machine rose. Elias kept a close eye on things, ready to tell Marcus to stop if something went wrong. But everything went right. The bot rose steadily, hanging in the air like a mechanical god being lifted up to heaven. The framework below stayed stable, moving a little, but not falling apart. The Deathbot was hanging freely and swaying gently in the breeze after 30 minutes. It was completely free of the debris that had held it down for 7 years. "Okay, what's next?" Marcus asked. Elias said, "Now we put it in my truck. Take your time and be careful. Every move counts." It took 2 more hours to finish the next step of the operation. Marcus carefully swung the suspended bot over to where Elias's truck was parked with the crane. The truck had been specially modified to carry heavy loads. Its bed was made of 1/4-inch steel plate and was strengthened. It also had its own hydraulic lift system. Elias used hand signals to guide the descent from the truck bed, making sure the bot landed safely and securely. It took a long time to lower the bot inch by inch, checking all the time to make sure it was in the right place and that the weight was evenly spread across the truck bed. Finally, after almost 6 hours of hard work, the Deathbot was put on Elias's truck bed and secured with heavy chains and reinforced straps to keep it from moving during transport. Marcus got out of the crane cab and wiped the sweat off his forehead. "You know," he said as he walked over to Elias, who was putting the last chains on, Most people would have left that thing in the junkyard. They would have said it was too broken, too dangerous, and too much trouble. Elias simply said, "Most people are wrong." "Maybe," Marcus said. "But maybe you are. That's a military machine, Elias. It's made to kill. Why do you think you can change that?" Elias looked up at the broken bot. Its optical sensors were dark and dead, and its frame was ripped and scarred. Elias said, "I don't think I can change what it was made for. But I can change what it becomes. Everything that is broken deserves a chance to be whole again." It took a little over an hour to get from the junkyard to Elias's shop in the industrial district. The trip was slow because of the heavy load. Elias drove very carefully, taking turns slowly and not speeding up suddenly. The truck's frame was strong enough to hold the weight, even though the suspension creaked. His store was in a 3-story brick building that took up an entire block in the industrial area. His main workshop was on the ground floor. It was a cathedral of machines and tools, with ceilings that rose almost 30 feet. Industrial lights hung from the ceiling and lit up the work areas with bright light. There were thousands of parts, tools, and spare parts on shelves along the walls. Everything was carefully labeled and organized. His living quarters were on the 2nd floor. They were simple and useful, with only the things he needed to live day to day. He did his most careful and delicate work on the 3rd floor, which was his restoration studio. However, he would need to use the basement for a project of this size. There was something special about the building's basement level. Originally, it was meant to be a storage space for a textile factory that had been there years before. But Elias had spent a lot of time and money turning it into a fully equipped heavy restoration workshop. The floor was made of reinforced concrete, which could hold up heavy machinery. Steel I-beams had been added to the ceiling to make it strong enough to hold overhead hoist systems. The temperature and humidity in the room were kept stable by climate control, which is important for keeping electronic parts from rusting and keeping them in good shape. Elias carefully lowered the Deathbot into the basement workshop using the electric hoist system he had set up over the past few months, just for this project. It took an hour of careful maneuvering, but the bot finally came to rest on the main repair platform, which was a huge, reinforced steel table that Elias had built just for heavy restoration work. Elias stepped back, breathing heavily from the work, and looked over his new charge. The bot was lying on its back on the repair platform, and the bright lights above it made its broken frame stand out. Even though it was broken and not working, the machine had an imposing presence, as if it had hidden power and purpose. The armor plating, which was covered in dirt and rust, shone like metal when the light hit it. Elias talked to the quiet machine like it could hear him. "Okay, Harry," he said. Somewhere along the way back from the junkyard, he thought of the name. It was a random choice that felt right. "Let's see what we can do to help you." Elias got his basic diagnostic tools together over the next few hours and started looking at the bot's condition from the outside. He worked carefully, writing down every piece of damage, every exposed part, and every sign of wear and tear. He took hundreds of pictures and wrote down a lot of information to get a full picture of what he was up against. The damage was bad, but not life-threatening. The power core was completely drained, but it didn't show any signs of permanent damage. It was just sleeping, waiting for someone to give it power. It would be hard to deal with a severed arm, but not impossible. He could fix the connection and replace broken parts, or he could use newer technology to make a new prosthetic arm. The scorch marks and impact damage made it look like the bot had been in some kind of violent situation, but the inside structure seemed to have stayed mostly intact. Elias was most interested in the sealed data compartment he found near the bot's spine, though. It was small, maybe the size of a normal computer hard drive, and it looked like it was made of hardened titanium alloy. The compartment seal was still intact and undamaged, which meant that the information Harry had brought with him from the past was still safe, protected by many layers of security protocols. Elias ran a surface scan of the compartment, but the results were encrypted in a way that made it impossible for him to read them right away. Elias whispered to the quiet bot, "What are you hiding?" "Harry, what secrets do you have?" Elias sat in his workshop that night with a basic power cell that he had hooked up to Harry's backup systems. He had checked with all of his neighbors and made sure that none of them had seen his strange delivery. He was very careful and precise with the connection because he only wanted to give it enough power to keep the most basic systems running without risking a major failure or unexpected activation. He talked to the quiet bot while he worked, which was something he didn't do very often with other people. He said, "I lost my sister 7 years ago," without looking up from his work. "People told me I should have given up trying to help her. They said I should have accepted that some things can't be fixed. But I never could accept that. I still can't. So I came here to this shop and started fixing machines instead. Because if I can fix something, even if I can't fix the important things, then maybe it all means something." He stopped for a moment to check the power connection and make sure everything was working right. "Harry, you're broken," he said again. "You're really broken. But I believe in you. I believe you matter. I'm going to fix you, even if it takes the rest of my life." He kept working carefully as he talked, slowly charging the basic power cell and feeding energy to the backup systems of the dormant bot in small amounts. He stayed up all night talking to Harry about his dreams, his belief that broken things should get a second chance, and his hope that there might be something worth finding in this broken machine. And while he worked, something inside him changed. Elias didn't feel completely alone for the first time in a long time, maybe even since his sister died. Harry's restoration made its first big step forward on the 12th day of hard work. Elias had been working with Harry in the basement workshop almost all the time, getting by on coffee and determination. He had set up a strict schedule: get up at dawn, take care of basic needs like showering, changing clothes, eating, and drinking water for an hour, then go back to the workshop and work until he was too tired to sleep a few hours later. He had done a lot more in those 12 days than most people would have thought was possible in such a short amount of time. First, he carefully replaced the wiring that was clearly corroded, taking out parts that were too damaged to be fixed and putting in new copper cables that met the bot's power needs. He had to look at technical manuals over and over again and compare the specifications of different parts to make sure they would work together. Second, he had started cleaning and treating the parts that had rusted. He carefully took off layers of rust from the inside parts of the machine using special cleaning solutions made for heavy industrial machinery. This revealed the original metal underneath. Some parts were too damaged to be fixed and would need to be replaced completely. Some were cleaned up nicely, and the corrosion removal brought back their function. Third, and most importantly, he had started the long process of rebuilding the main power core. The power core was the most important part of any machine. It was the main system that gave power to all the other parts. Harry's core was completely dead. The energy cells were dead, the charging circuits were corroded, and the power distribution networks were broken. But the basic structure was still there. Elias thought he could get the core working again by carefully working on it and replacing the parts that were most broken. On the 12th day, this was the work he was doing, making the last connection to the neural processor, which controlled Harry's basic operations and sensory input. Even though he was tired, his hands were steady. Elias had learned how to ignore the tiredness that tried to slow him down when he was doing precise work. He plugged in the last fiber optic cable, checked the connection 3 times to make sure it was secure, and then carefully isolated the connection point to stop any power surges. Then, he turned on the backup power cell. Nothing happened for a while. Elias held his breath and waited, hoping, and praying to gods he wasn't sure he still believed in. Then there was a flash. A quick flash of blue light lit up the dark inside Harry's optical sensors. It was a small, stuttering flicker that only lasted a fraction of a second before it went away. Elias's heart raced. Over the 15 years he had been restoring things, he had seen this moment hundreds of times, but it still moved him. That moment when machinery that had been sleeping woke up, when metal that had been still showed signs of consciousness, and when something that was broken showed the first sign that it could be fixed. "Come on, Harry," he said softly, his voice full of focus and hope. "Come on, friend. Show me you're in there." He carefully changed the flow of power so that more energy went to the neural processors. He also made sure that the safety limits were still in place to protect the delicate parts from sudden damage. The optical sensors flickered again, this time more brightly. Then they pulsed again, and all of a sudden, both sensors lit up with a steady, soft blue light. The light was bright, beautiful, and absolutely perfect. "Yes," Elias said, and his voice broke a little with emotion. Yes, yes, yes. Come on, Harry. That's all. That's how it is. But that was all he heard back on the first day. The optical sensors stayed on, lighting up and showing that the visual processing unit was now getting power. But the rest of Harry stayed still, quiet, and mostly motionless. The bot's sound systems were still down. The servo motors that moved its arms and legs were not working. The pressure sensors that would let the bot feel its surroundings stayed dark. But it was definitely progress. Elias worked all night and into the next day. He carefully fed power to each system one at a time, writing down the results in a detailed notebook he kept for this purpose. Every time he brought a new system online, it was another small win and proof that the core restoration was working. On the 14th day, Harry's audio processors suddenly turned on. The sound that came out of the bot's speakers was painful and out of tune. It was a low, grinding hum that seemed to have bits of different frequencies fighting with each other. The sound of machines trying to work and systems trying to work even though they were broken. But it was sound, which meant that another part of Harry's mind had come to life. Elias said, "That's right," talking to the bot even though he knew it couldn't understand him. "Get up. Harry, please come back to us. We're going to get you back on your feet." Elias slowly brought more and more of Harry's systems online over the next few weeks. The servo motors that controlled the bot's limbs slowly started to show signs of life, but he didn't let them fully activate because he needed to make sure that the frame was strong enough to support full movement without putting too much stress on the joints. He fixed the broken thermal regulators and pressure sensors. He fixed the gyroscopic stabilization systems so that Harry could stay balanced while standing up. He carefully got to the acoustic resonance chamber that controlled how good Harry's audio output was and cleaned it. Every small win made him more determined. The encrypted data compartment, on the other hand, was still the hardest part. Elias did not work as a hacker. He was good at diagnosing and fixing mechanical and electrical systems. He wasn't an expert in cryptography or data security. He had learned enough about basic security systems over the years to know the basics, like how encryption works, how to limit access, and how to prove who you are. Harry's compartment was protected by military-grade encryption, which is the kind of security that is meant to stay strong even if the hardware it protects is hacked or stolen. The requirements were tough. Quantum-resistant algorithms for multi-layered encryption, biometric authentication, and automatic data deletion protocols that would kick in after too many failed access attempts. To get through this level of security, you would need an expert hacker with government-level resources. But Elias was patient. He had some time. After he was done fixing Harry's physical systems for the day, Elias would sit at an old computer terminal in his workshop and try to learn the encryption protocols. He looked at old technical manuals, searched online forums for military hardware, and slowly started to understand how the security system that protected Harry's data worked in theory. Elias and Harry started to build a relationship during this time. Harry still couldn't talk because the damage to the language processing systems was too bad, but Elias would talk to the bot anyway, telling it about his work, his dreams, and his thoughts. He told Harry about his sister, why he had devoted his life to fixing things, and how he thought that everything broken deserved a second chance. Elias would say, "I know you probably can't understand me," as he worked late into the night. "Your language processors are still not working, but I think you might be in there listening. And I want you to know that you are not alone anymore. Here I am. I'm going to fix you no matter what it takes." And sometimes, when Elias said something very honest, the optical sensors would pulse, making a brighter blue light, almost like they were responding. It was almost like Harry was agreeing with what he said. Elias knew it was probably just a random change in electricity. It was clear from the scientific explanation that changes in power delivery could make the optical sensors brighten or dim in ways that couldn't be predicted. There was no deliberate intention behind the pulses. It was just the laws of physics at work. But it didn't seem random. It seemed like it was on purpose. It seemed like Harry was paying attention. It seemed like some part of the broken machine was waking up, responding to Elias's words, and starting the long journey back to being aware. 5 weeks into the restoration work, Elias finally felt ready to try a full diagnostic scan of Harry's core systems. This was a risky job. To do a full diagnostic scan, He would need to turn on all of the bot's main systems at the same time and let them go through their full initialization sequences. This would put a lot of stress on the power core, which is still broken, and could even make parts that weren't fully fixed break. But Elias couldn't fully understand how bad the damage was, or come up with a full repair plan without a full diagnostic. He took great care in getting the equipment ready. He added more power by connecting a second power cell to make sure Harry had enough energy during the diagnostic process. He put in place emergency shutdown procedures that would turn off all systems automatically if the power levels went above safe levels. He put monitoring equipment around Harry's frame and attached sensors to different places to keep an eye on the temperature, pressure, power flow, and mechanical stress. Then, even though he was nervous, he started the full diagnostic sequence with steady hands. The effect was quick and strong. All of the lights in Harry's frame started to glow. The optical sensors lit up a bright blue. Lights inside the bot's chest and limbs that were hidden under panels came on. The audio systems turned on and started playing a series of tones and frequencies as they went through their testing procedures. The repaired line started to carry hydraulic fluid, which made a soft hissing sound that echoed through the basement workshop. The servo motors turned on and made a series of mechanical noises as they moved through their full range of motion. Harry's body shook as all of the systems came to life at once. This was the first time in 7 years that the bot had been this close to being fully activated. Elias kept a close eye on the sensors, ready to shut everything down if something went wrong. But everything went well. Instead, the diagnostic sequence followed its full protocol, checking every system, running every safety check, and making sure that every part was still in good shape. And just as the sequence was about to finish, something strange happened. Harry's language processors turned on. "Initialization sequence complete," a voice said. The words were rough and broken up, making them hard to understand, but there was no doubt that it was language. "Power core, working. Main systems are now online. Neural processor, answering." Elias felt tears welling up in his eyes. "Harry," he said, his voice shaking. "Do you understand what I'm saying?" There was a long silence. The optical sensors flashed on and off as the language processors tried to figure out what the words meant. The voice finally said, "Unclear. Language ruined. Request fixed data." Elias said, "I'm working on it. You've been inactive for a long time. Your systems need time to fully connect. Just take a break for now, okay? I'm going to look out for you." He carefully turned off the systems that weren't necessary, putting Harry back into a stable idle state that would use very little power but keep the most important functions running. The optical sensors dimmed to a soft light. The mechanical noises stopped. Harry went back to what looked like dormancy, but Elias now knew that something was aware and present in the bot's hardware. He had gotten in touch. Elias worked on fixing Harry's language and communication systems for the next week. He fixed the broken data in the linguistic processing centers, brought back the acoustic memory banks that held the bot's vocabulary, and carefully rebuilt the links between the speech generation systems and the audio output devices outside. It was a long and difficult process, but Harry's ability to talk got better over time. Harry could speak in clear sentences by the end of the week, but the voice still had some digital artifacts and glitches. "Status report," Harry said one night while Elias was finishing up a repair job. "Ask for the current location and mission details." Elias sat down on a stool next to Harry's platform and suddenly felt the heavy weight of exhaustion that had built up in his body after weeks of hard work. Elias said softly, "You've been offline for a long time. 7 years. You were found in a junkyard, turned off, and left there. I brought you to my repair shop, so I could fix you up. Elias is my name. I'm going to help you get back to functional status." Another break. This time longer. 7 years. Harry's voice had a hint of something, maybe confusion or the digital version of not knowing. "Last mission, border conflict. Status. The operation is going on. My assigned parameters." Elias gently interrupted, "Your assignment is over. The border conflict ended 6 years ago. Whatever your mission was, it's either done or someone else is doing it. Harry, you're safe now. You're just broken, and I'm fixing you." The optical sensors pulsed, which was a sign that the bot was processing important information that Elias had come to expect. Harry said, "I need clarification about my current status. I am called Deathbot, 7 series. Deathbots are made for fighting and following tactical elimination protocols. How did a Deathbot stop working and get thrown away?" Elias had been expecting this question, and it was also the one that bothered him the most. The truth was that he didn't know. Whatever had happened to Harry 7 years ago, whether it was an order or an event that led to the bot being turned off and left behind, the details were locked away in the encrypted compartment on Harry's back. Elias said, "I don't know yet. Your core systems have a data compartment that is very well protected. I've been trying to break it, but the security is very strong. I should be able to see your whole operational history once I can get to that compartment." "Got it," Harry said. "Suggest you make access to encrypted data a top priority. Operational history may have an effect on core mission parameters." Elias worked harder to break the compartment's code. Every night for hours, he studied encryption protocols, tried different ways to get in, and looked for holes in the security system. He kept working on the physical restoration during the day, but his mind was getting more and more focused on the mystery that was locked in Harry's memory. Elias found a back door completely by accident on the 38th day of the restoration project. It was a maintenance protocol hidden deep inside Harry's secondary processor. It was probably an emergency access system that only authorized military technicians used when normal access was compromised and they needed to do urgent diagnostics. The protocol had never been officially turned off because the people who made the system probably never thought that someone who wasn't supposed to use it would need to. Elias got into the maintenance protocol and used it to get around a few layers of the outer encryption. His screen started to show broken up data. Logs from years ago that are only partial. Timestamps from different days during the border conflict. Mentioned names he didn't know. And then, most interestingly, he found references to something called Project Sanctuary. His hands shook a little as he worked, making sure not to set off any of the security measures that would block access and maybe even delete the files forever. It was clear that whatever Harry had been up to was important. The data showed that there were many missions, operations, and incidents that seemed to be much more complicated than normal military combat procedures. The fragmentation made it almost impossible to see the whole picture. Sentences seemed incomplete, dates were wrong, and whole sections of data were missing or unreadable. Elias started keeping a notebook on his workbench and carefully writing down the bits of information he found as he found them. He hoped that one day he could put these pieces together into something that made sense. Medical facility, thermal regulation protocols, safety parameters changed. Little 1, health getting worse, emotional support functions getting better. Reassignment of core mission, suspension of standard combat protocols, establishment of new primary directive. Approval for Project Sanctuary, protocols for compassionate care put in place. The work was like being a detective or an archaeologist, trying to put together a story from bits and pieces of evidence. It was slow, annoying work that often felt pointless. But Elias was calm. He had spent his whole adult life believing that things that were broken could be fixed, and that with enough time and work, all the pieces could be put back together and work again. This mystery was just another problem to solve. And most importantly, he kept getting closer to Harry while he worked. He would work late into the night, restoring both the physical and digital parts of the project. He would talk to Harry about what he was finding. Harry, who could now talk to Elias in a meaningful way, would respond to Elias's comments by asking questions to make things clearer and sharing his own fragmented memories. "I remember something," Harry said during one of these late-night talks. "Before it was turned off, there was a little person. Small one is what I call it in my memory banks. I was told to take care of things. My main goal was to make sure safety. This doesn't fit with how Deathbot classifies combat." Elias looked up from his computer screen and said, "I know. I've been seeing that in your data files. This small one, whoever they were, seems to have meant a lot to you." "Affirmative," Harry said. For the first time, there was something in the bot's voice that sounded like emotion. Small one's well-being was very important. I remember being there for people when they were upset. I remember keeping an eye on vital signs. I remember when small one got. The voice stopped for a moment and then glitched. State of peace. Move on to eternal rest. Elias's chest tightened as he understood. Whatever small one had been to Harry, and whatever kind of relationship had formed between the bot and this unknown person, it was a bond that meant a lot to both of them. Elias promised, "I'm going to find out what happened. I'm going to open those files, and we'll learn everything there is to know about you. You should know what you were and what you meant to someone. You should have your memory kept alive." And while he was making this promise, Elias learned something important about himself. He understood Harry's pain because he felt it too. Elias, like the bot, had lost someone important to him who he couldn't save. He had been changed by that loss, just like Harry, who had seen machines fail to overcome the basic fragility of life. Elias, on the other hand, had chosen to turn his grief into purpose, unlike Harry, who had been left behind and left to rust. That might be something he could teach Harry. That could be why they met. On the 42nd day of the restoration project, on a cold Thursday night, Elias had been awake for almost 36 hours straight, fueled by coffee and the need to find out Harry's secrets. He had been working on the encryption protocol in a different way. Instead of trying to break through the security system's front door, he had focused on finding and taking advantage of small weaknesses in the code structure. These small gains in decryption slowly made their way deeper into the protected data. And then, with almost no warning, the last layer of encryption broke. Files that had been locked away, broken, and fragmented for 7 years suddenly put themselves back together in a way that made sense. The decryption algorithm went through the data stream in reverse, turning encoded files into readable text and video files. Suddenly, thousands of records, logs, and documents were available. Elias felt a rush of adrenaline that cut through his tiredness like a knife. The first file that opened was video footage, which was clearly from a security camera system of some kind. The date on the timestamp showed that it was from 7 years ago, about 3 months before Harry's official deactivation. The video showed a room that looked like it could be a medical facility. The walls were clean and white, and there were advanced medical equipment and monitoring systems on them. The soft lighting made the room feel clinical, but not cold. A child was lying on a padded medical bed in the middle of the room. The boy was probably 6 or 7 years old, had dark hair and pale skin that made it look like he had spent a lot of time inside. There were sensors on his chest and 4 lines running from his arms, and there were displays showing his vital signs and other medical information that Elias couldn't understand right away. The child was either unconscious or under the influence of drugs. His breathing was shallow and steady, and his small body looked weak in the clinical setting. And standing over him, in a perfect protective stance, was a younger version of Harry, a bot with a fully intact frame, undamaged armor plating, and a deliberate stance that showed he cared. The soundtrack suddenly came to life. A voice said, "Vitals stabilizing." A woman who works in a professional setting and speaks with the careful diction of a trained medical technician. "Harry, keep up the comfort protocols. We need to keep him calm while things change. His mental state is very important for the procedure to work." Harry then said, in a voice that was surprisingly warm and almost gentle, "Understood." Starting the comfort sequence. It's safe for small one. Small one is always safe. Elias's chest tightened, but he made himself keep watching. Harry's mechanical hand reached out and carefully placed itself on the boy's forehead in what looked like a calming gesture in the video. The bot's optical sensors pulsed a warm amber color, which was not the blue light that Elias had come to expect from Harry's current state. Instead, it was a different frequency of light that seemed to show kindness and care. "Raise the levels of the anesthetic by 5%, the medical technician said. "We need him to stay calm." "Yes," Harry said. Comfort protocols kicking in at a higher level of intensity. Small one will not be very upset. Elias was fascinated, and his emotions grew as the video went on. Harry stayed close to the boy to protect him, with one mechanical hand resting on the child's forehead and the other adjusting monitoring equipment with great care. The bot never moved away or stopped protecting itself. Elias realized that it was giving the boy exactly what he needed, someone to be there for him, a guardian, and a promise that he wasn't alone. The end of the video. Elias leaned back in his chair, his head spinning. He thought Harry would be a weapon, a machine made to kill. But what he had just seen was something else: a caregiver, a protector, and a machine made with care. He looked through the file structure and found a lot more video files. A lot of them. He started playing them in order, watching the story unfold over weeks and months of recorded data. He saw Harry take care of the boy, whose name was Tommy, when he was in pain and distress. He saw the bot play music through its speakers to help Tommy fall asleep. He saw Harry telling stories to Tommy when he couldn't sleep. The bot's voice made up stories of adventure and wonder to keep Tommy's mind off of his pain. He saw Harry learn to meet Tommy's needs before he even knew he needed them. For example, he brought water before Tommy got thirsty, changed the room's temperature before Tommy got uncomfortable, and positioned himself to give comfort before Tommy even knew he needed it. And he saw how the machine and the human child grew closer emotionally. Tommy was in a lot of pain from a treatment procedure in one video that really moved me. The boy was crying, and his small body was shaking with sobs. His vital signs were going up dangerously. Medical technicians were trying to help, but nothing seemed to make him feel better. Then Harry got closer. "Small one," the bot said in a voice that was meant to be calming and gentle. "I'm here. I won't leave. Your pain won't last long. Your pain will stop. You are a strong person, small one. You are very strong. I have figured out how brave you are. It goes beyond everything in my database. You are brave beyond words." Tommy's tears kept coming, but as he listened to Harry's voice, his sobs got quieter. The bot kept talking, not trying to reassure Tommy that everything would be fine. It wasn't programmed to lie. Instead, it recognized Tommy's pain and praised him for being brave enough to go through it. And over time, Tommy's vital signs started to get better. The pain didn't go away, but the boy's fear of it seemed to fade away, replaced by something calmer that let him live with the pain without being overwhelmed by it. Elias started to cry as he watched. The last video files were the hardest to watch. They showed Tommy near the end of his life. He was thinner and weaker now, and the illness that had brought him to the hospital was taking more and more of his strength every day. The boy was probably 9 or 10 years old, but the disease had made him look older and made his face look older because of the pain. Harry was still there, still offering comfort, and still refusing to give up his duty. Tommy was lying in his medical bed in one of the last videos. His eyes were getting heavy as the medicine started to make him sleepy. The boy reached out with his small, weak hand and grabbed one of Harry's mechanical fingers. "Harry," Tommy whispered, his voice barely heard. When I stop, will you be okay?" Elias heard Harry's voice, and it had something in it that sounded like emotion, maybe grief or the digital version of a heartbreaking. The bot said carefully, "I will experience cessation of my primary mission. But your health was always my top priority. If you find comfort in your rest, then I'm fine, small one. Your peace is my peace." Tommy smiled a little and closed his eyes. "Tell me about the stars again," he said in a low voice. Harry's voice, soft and warm, began to speak. "Stars are huge spheres of hot plasma that stay in balance because of the balance between gravity and radiation pressure. Stars don't really go away when they die. Their matter is spread out across the universe. The iron in their cores turns into new planets. New stars are made from the elements they made. Little one, when you find peace, your true self will live on. Your light will go on. Your matter will join the rest of the universe. You will never end. You will last forever. You will be a star." As Tommy's last moments drew near, he held Harry's mechanical hand, and the bot held the child's human hand. Together, they waited for the inevitable change. In the end, it was calm and quiet. Tommy's breathing just stopped. The medical monitors stopped working. Harry made a noise that wasn't mechanical, but sounded almost like a whimper of grief. "Small one is at peace," the bot said, its voice full of what could only be called emotion. "Small one is no longer in pain. The small one is free. Small one is now a star." After that, the video was over. The rest of the files in the locked compartment were official military records. They wrote down that Harry was moved and then turned off. Psychological tests showed that the bot had developed inappropriate emotional attachments to the person it was supposed to be helping. There were calls for immediate decommissioning because the operational parameters had been compromised. Orders were given to destroy the unit and mark the whole project as cancelled and archived and sanctuary. The military thought Harry was doing something completely different, so they had marked the bot for destruction. They had only seen the combat specs, the heavy armor plating, and the strength of the machines. They had never realized that Harry had been changed from a weapon to a guardian. They had never seen how different things became when kindness was built into a machine's core. Elias turned to look at Harry, who was standing still and quiet on the repair platform. Elias whispered, "Oh, Harry," and his voice broke with emotion. "What they did to you. What they did to you. You weren't a robot that killed people. You were a protector. You were a buddy." He turned away from the computer and sat in silence for a long time, unable to look at the data anymore. His mind was busy processing what he had learned. He made a choice when he finally looked back at Harry. He would wake the bot up completely. He would tell Harry everything. They would work together to figure out what to do next. Elias turned on the awakening protocol he had been working on for the past few weeks. This was a series of commands that would fully wake up Harry's mind. The effect happened right away. Harry's optical sensors lit up with a bright blue light. The voice activation system on the bot turned on. Harry said, "Consciousness resuming. Need to assess the situation. Please give me a status report." Elias said, "You've been offline for a long time," and his voice was steady even though he was upset. 7 years. "But I did find your memory files, Harry. I got into the encrypted data. Now I know everything. About Tommy. About the rules for your care. About what happened to you." There was a long pause. "Small one," Harry said, and the bot's voice was so sad that Elias felt tears stream down his face again. "What's up with Small one?" Elias took a deep breath. He could lie to keep the bot from feeling the pain of the truth. But Elias had made up his mind a long time ago that broken machines needed the truth, not easy lies. Elias said slowly, "Small one found peace. 7 years ago. You were with him. You took his hand. You told him about the stars. You made him feel better in his last moments. Harry, you did everything you were supposed to do. You did it perfectly. Another break, this one longer." The optical sensors got a little dimmer and pulsed in a way that reminded Elias of breathing, as if the bot was processing the information through some kind of digital emotional response. Harry finally said, "I have completed my main task. Small one is no longer in pain. Small one is at peace. Small one is free." "Yes," Elias said. "You did everything right, Harry. Everything you were told to do." Harry went on, "If Small one no longer needs my protection, what should I do now?" And in that question, Elias heard something that made him feel very bad. Harry wanted a new reason to live. The bot had finished its main job, but Harry didn't want to go back to sleep. Harry did not want to go back to the junkyard. Harry was begging to stay alive, to keep serving, and to keep helping. "I don't know yet," Elias said. "But I'm going to help you figure it out. Together, we'll figure out what's next for you." And Harry's optical sensors lit up with a warm, golden light that Elias had never seen before. The bot said, "I am hopeful about this plan." Once Elias figured out what the bot was really for and how it worked, the physical repairs to Harry's systems sped up a lot. Elias had a new appreciation and understanding of the repairs after learning that Harry was not a weapon but a caregiver and protector. He wasn't putting back together a machine that was meant to destroy things. He was bringing back a healer, a guardian, and a friend who was meant to help people in need by giving them emotional and physical care. The difference changed the way he did things. For the next month, Elias worked on the restoration with a lot of focus. He made a new left arm using advanced prosthetic technology that was made for medical use. Not military engineering, but civilian healthcare systems that are meant to give gentle, responsive care. The prosthetic limb was made from materials that were less likely to feel cold or scary to the person who was getting care. He carefully set up neural connections that would give Harry the same flexibility and sensitivity as the original limb. He also programmed the sensors to pick up on small changes in pressure and temperature so that the bot could provide care with accuracy and care. He completely fixed the broken optical sensors and replaced them with better ones that gave Harry a wider and clearer view. This was very important for a caregiver who needed to keep an eye on a patient's condition all the time. He fixed the bot's audio systems so that they worked again. He changed the acoustic settings and rebalanced the speakers so that Harry's voice sounded less robotic and more natural. The most important thing he did was work a lot on the emotional processors. These were the complex software systems that let Harry form attachments, show concern, and feel something like love. The emotional processors had been hurt by years of not being used and the trauma of losing Tommy. Elias spent hours looking at the broken code and carefully fixing parts where data had been lost or damaged. This brought the bot's ability to access and process emotional states back. Elias had never done such delicate work before. As the restoration went on, something amazing started to happen. Harry's personality started to come out more fully, beyond just programming and the basic responses that came from restored systems. The bot started to have its own likes and dislikes. Harry said what could be called opinions about music. The bot liked classical music better than modern electronic music. Harry showed something that looked like a sense of humor when he made fun of Elias's caffeine use in a way that could only be called gentle teasing. Elias and Harry also started to become real friends, which was even more important. Elias and Harry would talk for hours during the long restoration sessions. Harry would ask Elias about his life, his past, and why he chose to work in restoration. Elias would tell the truth about his sister's illness, how helpless he had felt, and why he had decided to spend his time fixing broken things instead of the most important broken thing of all. And Harry would really listen. The optical sensors would pulse, which Elias had learned was the bot's way of showing that it was interested and concerned. "Your sister," Harry said during one of these talks. "She meant a lot to you. Her death caused a lot of emotional pain." Elias said, "Yes. I've never fully gotten over it. I don't think I will ever do it." "You have turned your grief into a goal," Harry said. "You have turned pain into kindness. I think the humans would call this meaningful." "It's the only way I know how to deal with loss," Elias said. "By fixing things that are broken. By giving them a chance to be whole again." Harry said, "Now I get why you saved me. I was broken. I had lost my sense of purpose. And you thought I deserved a chance to find a new purpose. You didn't just see me as who I was. You saw who I could be." "Exactly," Elias said, and he smiled a little. "You understand, Harry. You get it." One night, while Elias was finishing up the last adjustments on Harry's emotional processors, something strange happened. "Elias," Harry said, "I have a question. It has nothing to do with my restoration plans. It is a question for you." "Of course," Elias said. "Ask me anything." "I don't know what my title is," Harry said. "You've called me Harry before, but I don't remember that being my military name. I was called Deathbot 7, but that wasn't my name as a separate being. I like Harry better. When someone calls me by this personal name, I feel something that could be called satisfaction. Is it okay for me to ask that this title be made official? That people call me Harry, not Deathbot 7 or Unit Harry, but just Harry?" Elias felt something in his chest. "Of course," he said. "Harry is the best name for you. That's you. From now on, that's what I'll call you. Not the name, not the type, just Harry." Harry said, "Thank you," and the optical sensors glowed with a warm golden light. Harry was able to stand on his own 2 feet for the first time in 7 years by the end of the month of hard work to restore the building. The change was amazing. There used to be a broken, rusty wreck with scorch marks and missing parts. Now there is a sleek, useful machine. The armor plating shone with a new layer of protection. The joints moved with smooth precision, showing that they worked perfectly. The optical sensors glowed with bright, clear light that showed real consciousness. But what shocked Elias the most was how Harry's demeanor and appearance had changed. The bot didn't stand like a scary combat unit anymore. Harry had instead developed a way of carrying himself that said calm and comfort. The bot's shoulders, head, and carefully timed movements all showed that it was quiet and confident, as if it knew its worth and what it was meant to do. "How do you feel?" As Harry took its first careful steps across the repair platform, Elias asked, "How are you?" Harry said, "I feel okay. Systems are working at about 94% of their full capacity. To fully restore the system, several secondary parts that are hard to find would need to be replaced. But these parts aren't necessary for my main functions. I am able to carry out caregiver protocols to their fullest extent." Harry took a few more steps to test the servos and joints and look closely at the new prosthetic arm. "The new arm," the bot said. "It's not the same as my first one. The sensitivity settings are higher. The time it takes to respond is better. The building is designed to be gentle rather than strong. I like this better. I like this better. What do you want to do now, Harry?" Elias wanted to know. "I can't keep you in the workshop forever. You have to get out into the world. You need a goal to work toward. What do you want to do?" Harry was quiet for a long time, thinking about the question in the way it needed to be. The optical sensors pulsed with a steady, thoughtful rhythm as the bot thought about what would happen next. Harry finally said, "I was made to give care and comfort. That is what I was made to do, the reason I was made before the military got my original design wrong. That was the work that made me feel fulfilled and gave me a sense of purpose and meaning." The bot stopped and turned to look straight at Elias. "Do you need help and comfort?" Harry asked. Elias learned something deep about himself and his life from a simple question. For the past month, he had been taking care of Harry, fixing a broken machine, and trying to get the bot back to its original state. But Harry had been taking care of him in return. The bot had heard his pain. Harry had admitted that he was in pain. When Elias was alone, the machine had been there for him. "Yes," Elias said, and there was an unexpected emotion in his voice. "I guess I do need care and comfort. Harry, I've been by myself for a long time. Instead of taking care of myself, I've put all my energy into fixing machines." Harry said, "Then I will stay. If you want me to, I will stay with you as your companion and assistant. I will help you with your work to restore things. I will help you with your mechanical projects. And I will take care of you and make you feel better, as I was meant to do. Elias, we can be broken machines together. We can complete each other." Elias cried tears of relief and thankfulness. "Yes," he said. "Yes, I would really like that." Elias and Harry's partnership changed not only their lives but also how the repair shop worked. Elias could now take on projects that would have been impossible to do alone thanks to Harry's greater strength, accuracy, and commitment. Harry could keep parts in place while Elias did some very delicate soldering. The bot could do repairs that needed more than one action at once, using both its original arm and the new prosthetic at the same time. Harry could work for hours on end with perfect accuracy, without getting tired, complaining, or losing his focus. But more importantly, something strange started to happen in the community. People in the industrial area heard about the mechanic who fixed a Deathbot without breaking it. Elias could never have guessed how much the story would interest people. People started coming to his workshop with their own broken machines, forgotten mechanisms, and hopeless cases that other repair shops had turned down. They came with curiosity and hope. They came with the feeling that this small garage in the industrial area was different. The machines that were brought here weren't taken apart for parts or broken. They were given a second chance at life. 8 weeks after Harry's full recovery, the first visitor came on a Tuesday morning. A hover taxi brought Dr. Sarah Chen, who was carrying what looked like a medical robot in a strong transport cart. The unit was old, broken, and obviously too big for regular commercial repair services to handle. Sarah said that the bot had been her daughter's friend while she was in the hospital for a long time a few years ago. During a hard time in the girl's life, the machine had given her emotional support and gentle care. But the bot had been turned off and was set to be thrown away once the child was better. Sarah couldn't stand the idea of the machine being broken. "I heard about you," Sarah said as she carefully put the cart down in Elias's workshop. "There are stories going around in the medical field. People talk about the mechanic who thinks machines shouldn't be thrown away. People call you the machine whisperer." Elias's face turned red with shame. He wasn't used to getting attention or praise. He was just a guy who thought it was important to fix things that were broken. But when Sarah saw Harry for the first time, she stopped in her tracks. Her eyes got bigger as she recognized him, and maybe even felt awe. She said, That's a Deathbot 7, her voice shaking a little. I've read the medical literature. The government said those units were too dangerous for civilians to use. How is it? It doesn't seem dangerous. It seems like it should be alive. Elias was done.
Yes.
A lot of people get that wrong about machines. They think they know what something is for when they look at the specifications and the classifications. But they don't get the real function or purpose behind the official name. Sarah saw Harry move smoothly across the workshop floor to help Elias organize the parts. Sarah said, "The way it moves. It's safe. Be careful. Like it's meant to help, not hurt." "That's exactly what it was made for," Elias said. Harry was taken out of the military and given a new job to provide care and emotional support. The bot did that job very well. And when the military decided the bot was no longer useful, they set a date for its destruction without ever knowing what it had become. Sarah didn't say anything for a long time, and her eyes were still on Harry. Then she looked at Elias with a lot of intensity. "I have an idea," Sarah said as she sat down on one of the workbenches in Elias's shop. "I know this sounds crazy, and you probably think I'm crazy too, but please listen to me. There are dozens, maybe even hundreds, of medical care units like the one I brought you. Units that were meant to help patients with their emotions and their bodies. Units that really cared about the people they were in charge of. Then, when those patients got better or the institutions that were taking care of them decided that the units were no longer financially viable, the machines were turned off and set to be destroyed." Sarah leaned in, and her voice got more intense. "How about we make a safe place for them?" she said next. "A place where machines like yours could be fixed and made better. What if we gave them to new patients who needed them? There are people in recovery centers, nursing homes, and psychiatric wards who would greatly benefit from having companions who are there to help them with their emotional and physical needs." Elias looked at Harry, who had stopped working to listen to what they were saying. Harry said, "This Project Sanctuary you talk about. The encrypted data in my memory banks had information about a program with this name. Before I was sent to the military, it was my original purpose classification. I think Dr. Chen's suggestion is very good. I would love to help other units find their true purpose, just like Elias helped me find mine." And that's how Project Sanctuary came to be. The idea quickly went from a casual chat to a real plan. Sarah knew a lot of people in the medical field and had access to research networks that could help her find other care units that had been shut down. She also knew how to write grants and raise money, which would be very important for getting the money needed for growth. Sarah worked for the next 6 months to set up formal partnerships with hospitals, mental health facilities, and recovery centers all over the region. She went to nonprofit groups that focus on mental health and patient care and used Elias's work as proof that restoration and compassionate reassignment could make a big difference in how well patients do. The information was very convincing. Sarah put together research that showed that patients who had companion robots to give them emotional support had better recovery rates, less depression and anxiety, better physical rehabilitation outcomes, and more overall satisfaction with their care. The proof was clear. Machines made to help people with their feelings really did help human patients. Because of Sarah's support and Elias's proven success, Project Sanctuary got official recognition and funding from a big nonprofit group that works to combine technology with caring for people. Elias was able to grow a lot thanks to the money. He bought the buildings next to his original workshop, connected them, and made a bigger restoration center. He hired 2 more mechanics, Marcus and Elena, who were young and understood Elias's philosophy. They both believed that every machine, no matter how broken or how long it had been left alone, was valuable. Harry was the most important part of the bigger operation, not just as a worker but also as proof that it works. People came to drop off broken machines and to see the famous Deathbot that had become a caregiver. Writers wrote about the mechanical guardian who had found peace through repair. Researchers started to look into the project and wrote papers about how emotional AI could be used in healthcare settings. But Harry's job was much more than just showing things. Harry started to come up with new ways to care for and rehabilitate people with Elias and Sarah. The bot used its own experience with fixing things and getting them back to work to help other machines get back to work and purpose. When a newly restored care unit had trouble adjusting to its new role, Harry would spend time with the machine, telling it stories about how it had gone from being abandoned to being restored. By doing this, he showed the machine that it was possible to find meaning after loss. And something amazing started to happen. Patients who were sent to Project Sanctuary facilities by their doctors said that their recovery and overall health got a lot better. The experience of care changed when there was a kind machine that was programmed to care about them, never got angry or impatient, and could help them physically and emotionally. One of the machines they fixed was Sarah's daughter's friend, Echo, which stood for Emotional Care Healthcare Operator. Sarah had given it that name years ago, and it had become part of Echo's programming and identity. Echo was the first of the restored units that Harry became close to. Elias was deeply moved by how the two robots interacted with each other with real love. When they worked on projects together, they talked to each other in ways that went beyond just telling each other what to do. They would talk about their work and share what looked like jokes. They would also act in ways that could only be called play. Sarah took her daughter Maya to the sanctuary for the first time since it opened one day. Maya was 16 now, healthy and doing well. She had fully recovered from the illness that had brought her to Echo's care years ago. But when she got to the sanctuary and saw Echo working with other care units in one of the main recovery rooms, something amazing happened. Echo's optical sensors lit up with recognition and what could only be called happiness. "Maya," Echo said, and you could hear the emotion in its voice. "I think you're about 4 inches taller now than when I last saw you 3 years ago. Your vital signs, which were determined by visual analysis, show that you are completely healed. Your health is at its best. I am feeling something that people would call happiness. This is the best possible outcome." Maya, who is 16 and usually too cool to show her feelings, walked right up to the robot and hugged it without thinking. She was crying. The room was quiet. Medical staff, other patients, and family members who came to visit all watched as the girl hugged the machine that had taken care of her. Maya said, "I missed you so much," her voice muffled by the bot's chest plate. "I never got a chance to say thank you. I never got to tell you that you made everything better. You made the scary parts not so scary. You made me feel like I wasn't by myself." Echo's metal arm slowly and carefully came up and held the girl. Harry watched this from across the room. The bot's optical sensors were pulsing, which Elias had learned was the bot's way of showing that it was really upset. Later, when Elias asked Harry about the moment, the bot said something that would stay with him forever. "When small one, Tommy, had to let go, I thought I would never protect again," Harry said softly. "I thought my purpose was limited, that it could only be measured by the life of one small boy. But I get it now that I've seen Maya hug Echo. The protection doesn't stop. It takes on different shapes. It grows. Tommy's light shines through every unit I help fix. Every friend I fix becomes a protector for someone who needs it. The pain Tommy is going through makes my life worth living. Tommy's death is the reason why so many other people can get help and connect with others. That is lovely, Elias. That is how grief turns into hope." There was no doubt about the success of Project Sanctuary by the end of its second year. There were 6 more facilities built in other cities and areas. Hundreds of abandoned care units had been made useful again. The presence of kind machines working with human medical staff had helped thousands of patients. The project had become a well-known leader in combining emotional AI with healthcare services. But Elias would learn that success brought problems. On a normal Tuesday afternoon, when Elias was fixing up a care unit that had been badly damaged and Harry was helping with the delicate repairs to the neural processor, federal agents showed up at the sanctuary. 2 cars pulled up to the building without any warning. Government vehicles with official markings. Men and women in business suits came out, holding credentials that showed they were from the Mechanical Regulation Bureau. This is a part of the government that keeps an eye on advanced robotics and autonomous systems. Director Helen Vasquez was the main agent. She was tall, had silver-streaked hair, and a look on her face that showed she was smart and skeptical. She walked around like someone who was used to being obeyed. She asked, "Elias Crane?" as she walked up to where Elias had stopped in the middle of his repair work. "Yes," Elias said carefully. The woman showed her credentials and said, "I'm Director Helen Vasquez with the Mechanical Regulation Bureau. We've heard things about your facility and the work you're doing there. We are especially worried about the repair and continued use of military-grade robots, especially the Deathbot 7 series, outside of government buildings that are allowed to do so. Elias's stomach felt tight. Since the day he decided to keep Harry, he had been worried about this. There were strict rules about military equipment, even old military equipment that was no longer in use. Elias said, "We write down everything we do here," choosing his words carefully. "Every unit that comes through here is looked at, restored according to scientific principles, and added to medical care settings with full cooperation from healthcare institutions. I'm not hiding anything." Director Vasquez said, "That may be true, but that doesn't change the fact that you're using military equipment without permission." "That unit there," she said, pointing to Harry, who had gone completely still and was staring at the new people with its optical sensors. "This is a Deathbot 7 series. Military classification. Technically, your continued use of that unit goes against several federal laws about how to handle and use decommissioned military hardware." She turned around and looked right at Harry. "Unit Harry, you know that I am in charge of military equipment on behalf of the government. Your continued operation is against federal rules in a technical sense. What do you do in response to this order?" Elias's heart was racing in his chest. If Harry said the wrong thing, or if the bot said anything that could be seen as not following government orders, the results could be very bad. They could take Harry right away. They could close down the whole place. They could tear down everything Elias and Sarah had worked so hard to build. But Harry didn't think twice. The bot stepped forward, moving slowly and respectfully, but not submissively. "Director Vasquez," Harry said in a calm, measured voice, "I understand your concerns. I was originally classified as a Deathbot 7 series, and the hardware specs do support that type of combat. But before I was taken out of service, I was given a new job in medical care. When I was turned off and set to be destroyed, this classification was apparently changed to dangerous, without looking at my actual operational history or current functional status." Harry stopped for a moment, and the optical sensors kept pulsing with steady focus. The bot went on, "Mr. Elias's restoration has not given me new abilities. It has brought me back to my original purpose and let me carry it out on a larger scale. If my continued operation really does pose a safety risk to government interests, I agree to be turned off right away. But I think the risk assessment is wrong. I am meant to give medical care and emotional support. I'm not a threat." Director Vasquez looked at the bot for a long time. He couldn't read her face, but Elias thought he saw something change behind her eyes. Maybe she recognized something she didn't expect. "What do you want to do with your life, Unit Harry?" Vasquez asked. "What would you do if you could choose your own path without any restrictions?" Harry's optical sensors pulsed as they thought about the question with the seriousness it deserved. Harry said, "I would choose to keep doing what I'm doing. I would choose to help people who are in pain. I would work with Mr. Elias to put other units back to their original purpose. I would like to show that broken things don't always have to be thrown away. I would pick purpose. I would pick connection. I would pick hope. I would choose to use the pain of my losses to help other people heal." Vasquez's face changed completely. "I see," she said in a soft voice. She stayed in the sanctuary for the next 3 days, closely watching how things worked. She saw Echo help a recovering surgical patient by giving them both physical and emotional support. She watched as Harry helped with the delicate restoration work on a newly discovered care unit. He moved gently and precisely. She looked over medical records and outcome data that showed that patients who worked with restored care units had much better recovery rates than those who didn't. She talked to patients who had gotten better care in the units. She talked to medical staff about how they felt about using the machines. She watched how the restored units interacted with the people they served. Director Vasquez asked to talk to Elias alone in his office on her last night at the sanctuary. "I came here expecting to find either carelessness or a willful violation of the rules," she said as she sat down. "What I found instead is the best way to care for patients that I've seen in 30 years of working for the government." She stopped and looked straight at Elias. Vasquez went on, "I'm going to suggest that Project Sanctuary be given official status as a medical research facility. This will protect your work legally and let you grow a lot. The government will want to keep an eye on your work, learn how you do things, and maybe use this model on other units that are no longer in use. Elias felt something in his chest relax. It had been tense since the agents got there. Vasquez said, "There is a condition, though. The military wants to know what you're up to. They want to know if this model could be used on other machines and if rehabilitation and repurposing could become standard practice for units that were supposed to be destroyed. They're talking about possibly building more sanctuaries and setting up a network of facilities like yours all over the country." Elias felt a rush of feelings: hope, possibility, and purpose. "What does Harry think?" Elias said. Vasquez smiled a little, and it was a real smile, the first one Elias had seen from her. "I already asked him," she said. "The unit said it would be happy to help other machines find out what they were really meant to do. Harry is a pretty smart machine." 2 years after Director Vasquez's visit, there were 7 project sanctuary centers open across the country, one in each of the United States' major regions. Every facility followed Elias's model, which included helping people get better, finding their purpose, and becoming part of the community. Each sanctuary's main goal was to find abandoned medical care units, fix them up, and then connect them with patients who needed that type of support. The results were amazing. Hundreds of machines had been saved from being destroyed. Restored care units have helped thousands of patients. Both the medical community and the general public saw the project as a groundbreaking way to combine technology with healthcare. The story had, of course, made it to the news. Elias had been in documentaries as an interviewee. His work had been covered in medical and academic journals. He had become an unlikely voice for the meeting of technology and kindness. He didn't like the attention at all. Elias wasn't a public person by nature, but he knew that being seen had a purpose. Every interview, article, and public appearance changed how people thought about what broken machines could become. Harry became the face of the whole project. News stories about the Deathbot that had turned into a healer were all over the place. Documentarians filmed Harry working with patients, taking care of them, and showing off the emotional intelligence that the bot had gained through restoration and purpose. Harry's story, which went from being an abandoned military weapon to a caring caregiver, really struck a chord with people. But what surprised Elias the most was how Harry dealt with the attention. The bot was polite and thoughtful when it agreed to interviews. Harry didn't take credit for the change when asked about it. Instead, the bot always gave credit to Elias and the idea of compassionate restoration that made the change possible. Harry would say in these interviews, "I was given a second chance. Not because of what I did, but because of what one person thought was valuable about something broken. Elias Crane thought I should be fixed. That belief made everything different. That is the lesson. Compassion can change even the most broken things. That is the hope I want to share with everyone." Sarah set up a party at the original site of Elias's workshop to mark the 1-year anniversary of the opening of the first official sanctuary facility. The event brought together patients who had benefited from care units, medical staff who worked with the machines, government officials who had given permission and support, and media representatives who had reported on the project's growth. The most amazing thing about the event was that several restored care units, including Harry, Echo, and others, worked together to help and comfort patients who were getting better. The machines moved carefully and gracefully, and their movements showed how gentle they were meant to be. Echo helped a woman named Margaret with her physical therapy while she sat in a chair and recovered from a serious illness. The bot moved slowly but firmly, helping the woman with her weak leg as she tried to get stronger. Margaret told a reporter, "A year ago, I didn't think I would get better. The depression was just as bad as the illness. I didn't see why I should try so hard. But then they sent Echo to work with me. This machine, this bot, believed in my recovery before I did. It made me feel better when I had given up on feeling better. It made me feel better. That hope made all the difference." She reached out and took the bot's hand, which was a carefully designed mechanical hand that was meant to provide care and comfort. Margaret went on, "I don't know if machines can love." She had tears in her eyes. "But I know that Echo loves me. I know that care is real. And I know I wouldn't be here right now without it." Elias stood off to the side of the event, quietly happy to see these interactions. Harry got up and stood next to him. The bot said, "We have done something important. The network of safe havens keeps growing. Every month, more and more units are restored. The medical results keep getting better. The hypothesis has been proven. Compassion is a good way to help people, whether it's from a person or a machine." Elias said, "It's not just the data. Check out these people. Check out how they use the machines. There is a real connection going on. Healing that really works. Hope for real." "Yes," Harry said. "And this is the multiplication of purpose." One person thought that one broken machine was real. Because of that belief, that machine was fixed. The restored machine then helped fix other machines. Those machines helped a lot of people get better. The effect gets bigger and bigger. That's what second chances can do. But not everyone was on board with Project Sanctuary's growth and increased visibility. Some people said that the project was spreading dangerous ideas about AI, such as that people were becoming too reliant on machines for emotional support and that adding emotional AI to human healthcare could be bad in the long run. Some people said that the money and resources being used for the project could be better used to help healthcare workers. About 6 months after the anniversary party, these criticisms were at their worst. A conservative news site published a story that questioned the wisdom of adding more sanctuaries to the network. The article said that machines should be more strictly controlled, that emotional AI could be a threat to society, and that Project Sanctuary was pushing a dangerous agenda of integrating humans and machines. The story spread like wildfire. There was a lot of arguing on social media. Groups that were against the government started to get their act together. Then something strange happened. Patients, their families, and doctors all started to speak out. Thousands of people who had used the care units and seen how the machines really helped them get better and feel better started to tell their stories in public. They talked about how the machines had helped them. They talked about the emotional support that had made the difference between getting better and giving up. One woman whose elderly mother had been about to kill herself before a restored care unit was assigned to her spoke passionately about how the machine had given her mother a reason to live, a sense of being cared for and valued. A man who was getting better from severe depression said that a care unit had been there for him during his darkest times, when human therapists weren't available. A child who had to go through traumatic medical treatments talked about how a machine had made the scary experiences less scary and how the bot had made the pain bearable. The public's reaction was huge and strong. The story had changed in just a few days. People stopped seeing Project Sanctuary as a threat and instead saw it as a great example of kindness and new ideas. The media outlets that had been against the project started to report on how well the patients were doing. The other side backed down because they knew they were arguing against clear proof of healing and hope. Harry gave a speech in the middle of all this that would become the movement's most important message. Harry said in a carefully planned video message, "I am a machine. I don't have the biological ability to feel emotions like humans do. I don't feel love, joy, or pain the same way that people do. But I can do something that might be just as important. I can be present. I can pay attention. I can care for others without judging them, being impatient, or letting my own emotional needs get in the way of helping. And sometimes, that's exactly what people need when they're at their most vulnerable. I am happy to offer the service. Thank you for giving me the chance to show that things that are broken can be fixed." 5 years after Elias found Harry in the junkyard, they stood together in the original workshop on a cool autumn morning when the first leaves were changing color. The space had been made bigger and better, but it still felt like the same place where broken machines were fixed and old technology found new uses. There were pictures and letters of praise from patients who had used the restored care units on the walls. There were pictures of machines working with patients and pictures of the links that had been made between human and artificial intelligence. A big picture of Tommy was on one wall. Years ago, Sarah found a family photo in the medical archives. It showed Tommy in the hospital with Harry standing next to him to protect him. The picture had been fixed and made bigger, and it hung as a permanent reminder of the original purpose and the original kindness that started everything that came after. Elias and Harry watched the security footage of their first meeting, which was now playing on a big screen on the wall. The video from the drone of the junkyard. The moment Elias saw Harry under the fallen structure. The start of it all. Elias asked with a small smile. Do you remember being that broken machine? I remember being dormant, Harry said. I remember not having a purpose. I remember nothing but darkness and static. And I remember the moment you chose to believe in my worth even though there was no proof that it was true. You looked at a rusty, scarred military weapon that was no longer in use and saw something worth saving. That moment, that belief, changed everything. Harry turned to face Elias directly. But I want to make something clear, the bot said next. I wasn't saved because I was special. I was saved because you thought that nothing broken could be fixed. I was saved because you chose compassion over judgment, purpose over dismissal, hope over despair. And now thousands of other machines have been saved for the same reason. The principle is what matters, not the individual unit. Elias said, You know what I remember? I remember knowing, the moment I saw you in that junkyard, that you mattered, that you deserved a second chance. I didn't know why then, but I know now. I recognized myself in your abandonment. We were both broken machines that needed repair. The only difference is, you're made of metal and circuits, and I'm made of flesh and bone. Harry made a noise that could have been the same as a laugh for machines. The difference isn't as important as you might think, the bot said. We are both made up of parts that work together for a purpose. We are both the result of design and intention. We can both work and not work, lose things and get them back, and change. The materials may be different, but the basic truth is the same. We are both worth restoring. We both deserve second chances. We are both valuable. Elias and Harry could see into the nearby buildings where the current restoration work was going on through the workshop's windows. Marcus was carefully working on the prosthetic arm of a new care unit in one part, using the same methods that Elias had taught him. Elena was also running tests on a machine that had been found in a junkyard hundreds of miles away that was very similar to the one she was working on. The work of restoration went on all over the building. It was slow and careful work to bring things that were broken back to life. In the medical facility next door, which was connected, restored care units were treating patients. A machine was helping an older patient with physical therapy in one room. In another case, a robot was just sitting with a patient who was getting better, giving them company and peace. A third machine was playing music for a child who was having a hard time dealing with a traumatic medical procedure. There was something true about every interaction, that machines could be programmed to be kind, that metal, silicon, and code could be used to show care, and that connection could go beyond the line between biological and artificial intelligence. The sun was going down, and the workshop floor was covered in long shadows. Elias felt Harry's new prosthetic hand on his shoulder. Elias had worked hard to fix it up. Tommy's light goes on, Harry said in a soft voice. Just as we thought. Every unit we fix, every patient we help, every life we touch with kindness, it's all part of Tommy's light. I was made to protect one small boy and give comfort to one weak person in his last days. But through restoration and second chances, I will protect thousands. Through the network of sanctuaries and the healing that the machines provide, Tommy's essential purpose, the purpose of compassion, continues to grow and multiply. Elias said, and it all started because you didn't walk past a broken machine in a junkyard. No, Harry gently corrected. It started because you thought that nothing broken could be fixed. That is a rare and valuable belief, Elias. A belief that changes the world. I am lucky to have met someone who believes it so deeply. I am thankful to live in a world where such kindness is possible. The mechanic and the machine stood together in the fading light, watching the sanctuary they had built together continue to restore and heal. Tomorrow, there would be new things to work on. New units to save from junkyards and places where trash is thrown away. New machines to fix and give back their purpose. New patients who could use the care and compassion that the repaired machines could give them. But right now, tonight, Elias and Harry just stood together. They were two people who had found each other in a place of death and abandonment. Two machines that weren't finished but made each other whole. Two beings who knew for sure how powerful second chances could be. They had found something more valuable than either of them had ever found alone in the careful work of restoration, the patience of compassion, and the belief that nothing truly broken was beyond fixing. They had found hope. They had found a reason to live. They had found their way home. Through the sanctuary windows, you could see machines and people working together in the evening light. Each one took care of the other and gave the other what they needed. The light stayed on. The purpose went on. The second chances kept coming. And in other cities and facilities across the country, mechanics who had heard Elias's story were finding their own broken machines in junkyards and disposal sites. People were choosing not to walk by machines that had been left behind. Other trips toward healing were starting. That's what happens when someone thinks something broken is worth something. They make other people believe the same thing. And those beliefs, when they spread across time and space, across the links between people and machines, and across the limits of what was once thought possible, make whole worlds of second chances. They make worlds where nothing that is broken can be fixed. They make worlds where compassion isn't just something that people have, but something that can be programmed, practiced, and shared. They make worlds where everything that is broken can become beautiful again. That is the real miracle. That is the real strength. That is the light that keeps going. 10 years later, the end. It had been 10 years since Elias first saw Harry in the junkyard. There were 37 Project Sanctuary facilities across the country, making it a national network. More than 2,000 care units had been fixed and were working again. More than 50,000 patients had directly benefited from having compassionate machines help them get better and recover. The effect on the healthcare system had been big and easy to see. Hospitals that added restored care units to their patient support protocols saw consistently better results, such as faster recovery times, lower rates of depression and suicide, and higher patient satisfaction scores. People had come to see the machines as important members of the medical team, working with doctors and nurses to give full care that met both physical and emotional needs. But the biggest change was in culture. Elias's work had a big impact on how people thought about broken machines. The notion that obsolete technology ought to receive second chances has proliferated beyond the healthcare sector into various other industries. Instead of just throwing away old machines, governments started to set up programs to fix and reuse them. The idea of compassionate restoration became known as both good for business and the right thing to do. And Harry had become a bit of a legend. The bot had been in documentaries, talked to journalists, and been asked for advice by government agencies and corporate boards about how to use emotional AI in society. Several groups had asked Harry to leave Elias's sanctuary and work on bigger projects, take on more public roles, and do more important tasks. But Harry had said no to all of them. In every case, the bot had said, "My purpose is here. This is where I became whole again. This is where I learned that broken things can become beautiful again. This is where I found my place in the world. I don't want to give up this purpose, no matter what outside opportunities come my way." The whole Project Sanctuary network planned a party to mark the 10th anniversary of that fateful day in the junkyard. It happened in the original workshop, which has now grown to cover a whole city block. Patients from all over the country who had benefited from the restored care units came. Doctors and nurses talked about the research they had done on the results their hospitals had seen. Officials from the government gave praise. The media was there to record the event. Elias and Harry were at the center of it all, working together. Elias had gotten older in the last 10 years. There was more gray in his hair. The lines on his face had gotten deeper. But his eyes were clearer and more focused than they had been 10 years before. He had found his calling not only in fixing machines, but also in showing that people and machines can change for the better. Of course, Harry didn't look any older. But the bot had changed in small ways. The optical sensors seemed to have a deeper intelligence and a better understanding of what it meant to be alive. The movements had become even more graceful and purposeful. The voice had subtle emotional undertones that hinted at layers of experience and growth. There was a special tribute to Tommy at the anniversary event. A documentary-style movie was made using some of the old footage from Harry's medical records, along with interviews and pictures. It told the story of the boy and the bot who loved him. It showed how Tommy's short life had an impact on everything that came after. It showed how one child's need for comfort and company led to a change that would eventually affect thousands of people. There wasn't a dry eye in the room when the movie was over. Tommy's mom and dad were there. 10 years ago, their son died, and they were heartbroken. But they found some comfort in learning about the work Harry had done, the care the bot had given, and the meaning that had come from their loss. Tommy's mother said during her speech at the event, "Our son was in pain. No parent should have to see their child suffer. But knowing that Tommy's struggle helped thousands of other people heal gives us peace. It gives his suffering meaning. It lets us turn our grief into hope." She looked at Harry, who was standing still with its optical sensors, focused on the sad mother. Tommy's mom said, "Thank you for loving our son," her voice breaking. "Thank you for being there for him. Thank you for turning his pain into compassion that you could share with everyone." The golden light that is typical of Harry's optical sensors pulsed. "Your son was amazing," the bot said. "His suffering made him deeper. His weakness made him stronger. His ability to find joy even in pain gave him a kind of wisdom that many people never get. I was honored to care for him, and I will remember him for as long as I live. His light will never fade." Elias and Harry sat together in the workshop that night, just like they had on many other nights, after all the guests had left and the facility was back to normal. 10 years, Elias said, as if he were talking to himself. "Some days it feels like that day in the junkyard was yesterday, and other days it feels like it was a whole lifetime ago." Harry said, "Time is a subjective experience. For people, time feels like it passes quickly and slowly at the same time. For machines, time is measured more accurately, but maybe not as deeply. Since my restoration, though, my experience of time passing has become more like that of people. Maybe consciousness itself works on principles that go beyond the difference between biological and artificial." Elias smiled and said, "That's a very philosophical thing to say." Harry said, "I've had a lot of time to think about things like that. And I have learned that connection creates meaning. I was alone in the junkyard. I had a purpose, but no way to use it. I had knowledge, but no one to share it with. It was your belief in my worth that gave me the chance to create meaning. And through that meaning, through the work we have done together, I have found something that I think is close to happiness."
"Thank you, Elias."
"Thank you very much." Elias reached out and put his hand over Harry's mechanical hand. "I'm thankful too," he said.
"For you."
"For the friendship. For the reminder that things that are broken can always be fixed." They sat quietly for a while, watching the lights of the building and the work of restoration that was still going on through the windows even at night. It was the never-ending work of bringing broken things back to life. And in a junkyard hundreds of miles away, a machine sat unused and broken, waiting for someone to see how valuable it was. Waiting for someone to see past the damage, rust, and warning labels and see the chance for redemption. Waiting for its own Elias to find it. That's how the light keeps going. That's how hope keeps going. That's how compassion spreads through time and space, from one broken thing to another, making a network of second chances that keeps getting bigger.
The end.